Expressing a particular viewpoint will make that viewpoint more popular in the long run, and they cited the resurgence of far-right nationalism in Germany and Europe more generally. Yeah, I can see how that idea would make intuitive sense, but I would need to see a little bit more there. I'd need to see a bit more evidence, I think, and backup, because I think the resurgence of the far right across Europe and America probably has like slightly more complex causes than just that. Etna Neymer and quite a few other people said that by suppressing white supremacist speech, we spread the same hate as them. And this is something that that I got talking to with a guy at a protest just a few days ago, actually. I was in London, and the EDL, who are a far-right group in the UK, were out having a rally, and me and a few other people were out kind of having a counter-demonstration. And at one point, me and this guy, who I guess was just on his way to work or whatever, got pinned against the shop window because the police were fighting with somebody in front of us, and we kind of couldn't really go anywhere. And we got to talking while this was going on, and he was saying, oh, you know, like you're far left, it's just the same as the far right, you know, can't you see that like the violence is the same? And I was like, well, no, because if you're a Nazi, right, and people come at you for it, and you don't like that, you can stop being a Nazi anytime. And yeah, alright, I'm not going to be your best friend straight away, I'm not going to trust you straight away, but, you know, I'm not going to have a problem with you. Like, look at somebody like Glenn Beck in the US, who I understand used to be kind of a very, very far-right commentator and has now been like slightly mildly critical of Trump, and a lot of the centrist media is sort of welcoming him back in. So the point is, if you're a Nazi and people come at you for it, you can stop. But if you're Jewish, Muslim, disabled, LGBT, a person of colour, and Nazis come after you, the only thing you can do that will make them happy is to stop existing. That's the difference between the way that the left wing and the right wing use the friend-enemy distinction in politics, which I talked about a while ago in my video on Trump and the problem with politics, if you remember that one. Now, that is not to say that all violence from the left wing is okay. Absolutely, God, no, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that anyone who claims to be standing in the centre, like that guy who was just on his way to work, who talked to me, and says, oh, everyone on all sides of me is completely the same. Anyone who says that, like, really doesn't know what they're talking about. Speaking of lovely people I'd like to have a conversation with, though, it's been an amazing month on Patreon. Thank you so much to everyone who supports me giving away free education. So thank you so much to Disciple, Lydia and Nate Thorne, Romy Collier, Miki Rao, Peter Wells, Leo Vigildo Nito, Michael A. Hill, Tink Hedon Donwy, Cecile, Thomas Z, Nick Turner, Philip Wheelgoose, Alex Goldhill, David, the Benevolent Malevolence, Jodie Dawkins, Christopher Meyer, Abdullah Al-Tuwaidri, Gazak CJ, John Bell, Ben Seema, Michael Zafaropoulos, Alex Boer, Scott, Emiliano Haynes, Jeffrey Peckham, Leo Barros, Patrick Bruno, Wesley Harden, Kit Fag, Caleb Weiss, Maxim Reiser, Siri Agnethe Eliasson, Brian Daly, Sophia Sun, Nick Travaglini, Luke Fox, Nicole Thompson, Pano, Jim Norman, Ian George Walker, Joe Benavides, Kevin Thompson, Francesco Day, Francesco, Brendan McAuliffe, Alton Burkholder, Peter Lyko, Adil Abdullah, Istvan Hegyes, Eric Amundsen, Edward Wijaya, sorry Edward.
Get on with it.
Adib Shalabi, Keith Chang, Eugene G. Aiton, that's a tongue twister, Jonah Dunch, Tin Can Audio, nice one, Colin Horn, Kaja Berger, and Chris Kershaw. Thank you very much for making sure that I can afford rent and food this month. Leo Vigildo Nato earned a reward. They got to ask me one question that I would answer in front of everyone who watches the show, and they chose to ask me what I thought about Sheldon Wolin's concept of inverted totalitarianism. I have not read Sheldon Wolin or anything about his concept of inverted totalitarianism, but having had a quick skim of a few articles, I think the general idea Wolin's going for is that democracy in the USA, and probably by extension in my country, is closer to totalitarianism than we might generally like to think. The tendency of liberalism to slide slowly to the right is something that's been pointed out before by writers like Carl Schmitt and Falguni Sheth, who I recommend, and Hannah Arendt as well. So it sounds like Wolin is saying a lot of the same or similar things to what those philosophers have said, but under a single heading, so thank you very much for the recommendation. Next, we talked about George Orwell, 1984, and the link between knowledge and power. The Hard Problem had a brilliant question. They asked whether things like trade secrets and intellectual property could be a kind of epistemic injustice. That's a wrong that you do to somebody specifically in their capacity as a knower and giver of knowledge. Because trade secrets and intellectual properties kind of stop people from knowing things, I think that's the angle they were coming from. And Miranda Fricker, the philosopher we talked about, doesn't mention things like that, but you know who does? Paul Mason, in his book Post-Capitalism, talks about how intellectual property rights and patent laws and so on might be holding us back politically. So if that's something that you're interested in the relation between sort of ethics and the availability of technology, post-capitalism might be a good one to check out. Admiral Percy says, "Is it your beard?" Well, it's not anyone else's. Jose Morales asked whether when academics use unnecessarily complex language or jargon, could that be a kind of epistemic injustice? And ooh, I really, really like that idea, because there is a lot of jargon and there is a lot of special technical speech, not just in academia, but even in things like acting as well, which I do as well. There's a lot of jargon too. So, I don't know, it's interesting to think of, because sometimes the jargon I feel is necessary and useful, but sometimes I wonder what other function is it performing? Is it also kind of a signifier of an in-group? Is it also a power play? Yeah, those are all very interesting questions. Not sure how to pronounce that, said that what they object to is a creep in the definition of the word violence. I've talked on this channel a few times about violence and what it is and how we come to define what it is. And one thing that I and a lot of the people I cite do draw attention to is that what we define as violence will be affected by our political position. So somebody's political views will affect what they think of as being violent. For instance, the Black Power activist Kwame Ture said, is it not violent for a child to go to bed hungry in the richest country in the world? I think that is violent. So he thought that was a kind of violence, kind of intentional deprivation of food when you could be helping somebody. And people with different political views might disagree with him on that. And if we attempt to define what violence is in terms of harm or well-being, then we're going to run into similar problems there, because your views on power and politics will affect what you think of as being harmful and what you think of as being a kind of well-being and what you think is good for somebody and who gets to say what is good for somebody or harmful. And that doesn't mean that we can never usefully use it, although these discussions can never be solved and are completely intractable. It just means that it's quite useful, I think, for us to all be aware of the fact that the particular patch of earth that we are standing on will affect our view of the surrounding countryside and what goes on there. So I guess I'd say it's not so much a creep in the definition of the word violence as the revelation that it was never really as fixed as we thought. By the way, Nicholas Young, the haggis was delicious. Those are all the comments I've got time to go through. Thank you very much for leaving them and for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!